from him first, and then we'll have a panel discussion, but it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Heiko Gerhardt from JLR. Heiko, the stage is yours. Lean forward. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, my honest congratulations to the win yesterday night. But I'm quoting in this case as most Gary Lineker, you know, game takes 90 minutes and the end the Germans win. And I like Gary Lineker very much. So let's see how the World Cup goes on. It takes still, I think, 6 weeks or 5 weeks to go. Looking forward to that. Yeah, I will talk a little bit about resilience and speed today, not only from a, let's say, JLR perspective. It sounds, I know I look much younger. I have 25 years experience in automotive in various complex environments. And it was all about, you know, getting things fast done. Yeah? And that's what I'm talking a little bit about today. Let me start with this. You know, since COVID, the world has changed quite a bit. And I think here are so many supply chain logistic people in it. I think we all know what this means on this point. It's coming from chip crisis, into supplier crisis, into regulations, into geopolitical elements in it, Strait of Hormuz latest, and all others around. So mainly I would say is a kind of, and I hope that really it's getting over, yeah? But this is not the case. To my mind, I think the kind of disruption, the kind of turbulences, and the fast changes coming, impacting all our work, is simply the new normal, and we have to deal with that. Yeah? And the difference from my point is the world is much more complex out of that. It's faster, it is harder to understand, and this needs, to my mind, a different kind of approach, which I would like to take you a little bit through. I need to be really open. My intent is not to be a smart ass with you and tell you what to do. You are grown-ups and deeply in the business as leaders. I want to share some thoughts on giving some kind of ideas, and I'm also looking forward to the discussions after that. So resilience is, to my mind, not about stability. It's not about building a wall and being in the castle and being there straight down. It is simply the speed of adaptation which gives you the advantage. It is the speed of anticipating disruption. It's the speed of preparing for disruption. It's the speed of the response, as well as of the speed of recovery from any kind of issues we are facing, and the learning out of it. And it concludes in the end always on this way, how fast we're going to make smart decisions. Because most supply chains, organizations, they are failing under disruption because they are too slow to see, too slow to act, too slow to decide. And the resilience at speed, it is also a huge competitive advantage in this mean. It is a kind of, if you are fast, you protect revenue. If you're fast, you get more efficiency on operational level. If you're fast, your working capital goes down. And if you're fast, you minimize the cost of disruption. And it is simply like evolution, like Charles Darwin said, only the fast one who adapt fast will really survive a complex environment. We all know in all our companies, and we discussed this interestingly today in the round table, a lot of, let's say, blockers holding us back. And in my experience of 25 years, I would say organizations are designed to be slow. What we think was kind of stability is now more a fragility because of the complexity we are living in. What I see is, and I'm not talking particularly about one company, is the kind of siloed functions and the informations around it. If you think supply chain only from a procurement angle, from a manufacturing angle, or for logistic angle, you don't get the complexity really done. It's only one view of it. You have to think it end to end. Sometimes the boss is right, and I've seen a lot of hierarchical structures of the boss is right on this point. This is slowing down, slow governance. A lot of decision loops are in there. Probably one of the most important things, and it's a very German thing, is the kind of fear of imperfection. Kind of, it must be perfect before we get it done. Completely wrong. And fragmented ownership. This is probably one of the scariest things of blockers at this point. In bigger organizations, it is often so different accountabilities are fragmented. And this is slowing down because there's not one person who's owning an end-to-end process. I'm not saying it's owning the function in total. I'm saying simply, I'm accountable, I'm putting the head on the table. And these structures, they are, let's say, created in a way and holding us back. So what to do about it? Yeah? What to do about it? And I would quote in this point, not Lineker, I would quote Einstein, who was saying a kind of, if we want to solve such a problem, then we need to change our thinking because the old thinking has caused this kind of problems. And it is as complex as you see with this little Rubik's Cube on this point. So I came up with an idea saying the 5 disciplines of speeding up an organization. And it starts simply with finding the right focus. What are you doing? Find the right data to make decisions, lead on speed, find the right structure and the right framework, and steadily innovate. And the measure KPI I would come up is the time you get to smart decisions. This is simply staying for how to get things done fast. Yeah? Get it done, do, make in a smart way. And in preparing this today, I came with the thought as a kind of, this is not a steady, no organization is a steady kind of organism. It is always turning like a flywheel. Every situation is giving you new. You have to readjust focus. You have to readjust your data. You have to readjust the leadership, the structure, and the innovation. Because getting things done means also fast, smart decision, fast outcome, good outcome, better insight, and again, the next step on decision. I'm deep diving this a little bit more, also around that. What do I mean with focus? This is simply an organization. Why is your organization existing? Why is it there? What are we about? What do we stand for? Really important element of it. And the prioritization. What are we doing first? Yeah? What's our most important problem we are solving next on this point? Intelligence. My understanding is not kind of, we had it earlier in the round table, it's the availability of data. It's all about understanding the information you have and take the time to think it through. Think precise, yeah, and then act fast and make it visible on this point. Structure. This is not RASI charts or this is not org charts in the point. My opinion about RASI charts is a very negative, I admit that, because this is only describing what other one should do, I don't want to do, slowing down. A fast organization is having an end-to-end ownership, and very important, how do we collaborate between suppliers, between different faculties in the company. This is what I mean with structure. Leadership, most important thing to my mind is a kind of every leader is in charge for the speed of the unit he's leading on this point. And it means you have to create a culture of speed, which is more or less how do I behave on this point. Innovation. I'm living in a world of AI and a lot of technical groundbreaking things. And I made a lot of failures in that space lately on this point. I think innovation means in a kind of try new things, yeah, fast, fail fast, reflect and learn. That's the point. That's exactly what I mean with innovation on this point. And this ensures to create the right transparency to solve problems, giving the right information to do that, and giving you the real speed of fast decision making on this point. So this is so far, I know a little bit theory, and I'm tending sometimes to get a little bit philosophical, but it works in the reality, and I'm sharing a little bit what we've done in the JLR space around that. As I said, I've been running material fulfillment the last 3 years, ending by the 30th of August, and doing then something new on this point. But we were able to build up a quite competitive and a quite fast supply chain organization, and it started with the focus. Yeah? And our key focus was we own supply. Now I'm starting with a small unit of people, but we said to close the gaps in JLR supply was our job. Focus, clear, precise, and also clear for the company. Let's say the kind of system we're working in. We're in charge for supplying into plants. That means every supplier is supplying into our plants and also supplying into all the retailers. So relatively huge kind of environment, but it is really important what it's also not. We don't do program work, we don't do new model program launch and this stuff. This is simply focused on running production, supplying the plants, and the aftermarket bit in this point. And we have a clear kind of prioritization of all the issues coming in regarding the severity. Our first question is always, is a kind of, what's the stock out date? When does it hit me on this point? Intelligence, I will deep dive this a little bit later. We've highly, let's say, built up capacity in supply chain mapping because we came to the conclusion to understand our supply chain, not only in a tier 1 level is helpful. We need to get much deeper when learning out of the chip crisis to understand if there is somebody failing downstream, raw materials, chips, what does it really mean to us? What's our impact? We've established what we call a kind of risk engine. We are covering right now 20 plus different data sources, including AI, to deliver what is happening in the world. So what is a strike somewhere in Bosnia? A kind of border closing in North Africa, a kind of storm in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, we have one supplier who's doing some cohesive stuff, by the way. So what I mean with that is a kind of, we are highly invested into kind of understanding what's going on in the world. We even took also a step ahead and monitoring in an initiative we call threat response, roughly 50 threat areas, Taiwan, earthquakes in Japan, something like that, what might happen. And we also hit into kind of how do we forecast. Yeah? Forecast, and this means not automatically we ask an expert. It is bringing some small group of smart people together. How is the situation developing? What do you think about the kind of storage prices for chips, for example? What's happening there? So this is kind of how we get intelligence. Structure. Within JLR, we have established what we call a supply chain tower. This is a kind of two-staged control system, governance system of talking about all the supply chain gaps we have. The aftermarket element into the retailer as well as the kind of supply into the plants. This is a working level and once a week an executive level. Everything runs to that. This is one single source of truth where we are sharing our kind of conclusions, our risks, our kind of problems and feeding them later into the SNOE and SNOP. One game changer regarding structure was also, we call this problem-solving squads. That means we've set for, let's say, severe issues, a project manager dedicated to a specific kind of supply issue. Aluminum flood, Strait of Hormuz. These are the things where we are project managing across all functions and eliminating the, let's say, siloized view on this. Another thing we've done also kind of, we empowered that people to report up to the board level where we are. So it's not a director explaining, bloody hell, that's the problem we're doing. It's the person who's doing the problem, who's solving the problem in the company. Partnership with the supply base. This is a big shift change within JLR to my mind from an every Friday communication, that's where we are, till a case-based, really close on the same eye-level interaction in critical cases. You know, my example is always in this case, the way how we worked, let's say 1.5 years ago together with an aluminum supplier to manage a kind of completely shut down plant with 6 months no aluminum getting out of it. That's something we worked only together. Yeah? You have no chance if you come on and into a typical OEM supplier mode. This is partnership is a key on this point. Another point in the structure important, it is not only that you have a kind of governance structure. You do over, let's say, the chief governance officer and tell everybody what to do. You need also to have ground force, sending people into the supply base. So I was lucky to have in that function, on the one hand, the capacity planning team interacting with the supply base and also the supplier development teams, which are going directly into supplier if we have a logistical problem, if a supply chain problem, and is coordinating also within JLR. And then the way how we manage crisis, we put it also in a very structured way, and this is what we've developed in the last couple of years so far. Leadership, I will deep dive this a little bit later. You know, I've always, let's say, disappointed my HR colleagues a little bit in this point, because there may be many seminars, how you do feedback and how you learn and what is important. But in the end, it's one simple thing to my mind, which is really important in leadership, is how you behave. Because, I'm saying always, if how you deal with the cleaning lady on the floor is showing how you are coming up. And this is how you treat the people, how you are, how respectful you are. This is for me a key element. And this is behavior on this point. And this drives, this is something I try in all kind of responsibilities I had in various companies to behave like I am, to be also visible and to be, let's say, tangible for the people. Innovation, we've done quite a bit of work with Warwick University. This is called a Supply Chain Innovation Hub. This is our kind of, let's say, free room of trialing things and failing around. Did a lot of AI work regarding predictive analytics, which we didn't really succeed in, forecasting work on aftermarket demands, mapping. And this is a kind of small space where we put academia together with industry, and we're giving us really the space to fail. Yeah? And we have, let's say, regarding risk scoring, quite a bit of tremendous results, and we are thinking right now also to opening this up for other companies, because this correlation or this kind of interaction between academia and between industry is quite fruitful. We have also running a kind of startup competition. Yeah, we've done this last year regarding mapping specifically to get new ideas in, and we are playing around with AI. Yeah? To be open and honest, I'm not an AI expert, but this is for me one of the most revolutionary technologies I've seen in my life. And to get into that is really important. But we're not at the stage that I have, let's say, master examples of what we're doing. I will talk a little bit later. And I think we've established a kind of failure culture. It is okay to fail and to learn out of it. Yeah? And we are discussing this quite critically. This is, let's say, grown in the last 3 to 4 years. And we've actually delivered quite a bit of contribution to the JLR success, to revenue efficiency and around the kind of, and I think, we are, let's say, in a billion level of revenue and profit we have simply secured by closing a whole lot of complex supply gaps in the last couple of years. Let me talk a little bit more about mapping, because this is one of the, let's say, for me, most important things in that environment. I deep dive a little bit leadership, and then I'm up also sharing some thoughts on AI deployment on this point. So, supply chain and mapping. As a kind of, when we started this 18 months ago, we thought we find somebody with their eye pushing a button and we're getting plotted out our, let's say, supply chain map. Was a little bit the wrong approach, and it was started, first of all, what do we think is a map? And for me, a supply chain map is not automatically a kind of, there is a supplier tier 3 down there at a certain location. A supply chain is a network of connected information. And this is the kind of really the treasure, and it's not a simple chain, one directed. And we understand this in a way of, I have down till my TN level, distributed capacity, can understand. I have cost, so I can create theoretically cost maps, where is cost driven. At different locations, where they're sitting in what regions. Interesting is also kind of ownership maps of chip industry. You will really see that everybody's owning everything, and it's really a blocked situation around that. Time, what does it take from a part getting from China over to Europe in different stages? Quality, where is the problem caused? Working capital, where does inventory sit? And the dependencies, where are points of convergence in this network? And how do I implement? What pattern can I detect? So this is a kind of really a structural complex thing, which needs quite a bit of time to understand and to get done at this point. So it's not only a kind of, this is a tier 1 location, we get it done. But it's the baseline for understanding what the impact is if something is going to happen. So a little bit of kind of numbers around. We've mapped so far 75% of our supply base in 18 months, let's say at least to tier 2 level, and 50% up till tier 3. And this was one of the realizations we also had. You know, it's pretty hard now to get more because we are, let's say, the tier one suppliers are not collaborating always at that point of time. On this point, it's simply hard to get the data around, and beyond tier 3, hard to manage on this point. We used AI in order to, let's say, to accelerate that, but we failed because the data is simply not available. They are, let's say, taking data, let's say, officially available of trade paperwork, yeah, available in the internet, very simplified set. And we made a kind of experience that our manual, simply calling, getting us faster, as well as much more accurate on this point. Analyzing the network is a different story, and I'll come to that in a minute. What we see right now, only to size this a little bit, is the point of 150,000 plus nodes in a network creating value for an OEM making 350,000 cars. Yeah? And it's only 75% of it, or even less. So this is globally distributed. And this shows the complexity of the structure. And this is not visible. Yeah? When I get it right, it took GM 12 years to manage or to map their complete supply chain. We are not aiming for that to make it complete. Our point is more, we have a good overview now, and we have the capability, if there is a specific problem, like Strait of Hormuz, we can really deep dive. We know what to do, and we generate pretty fast who is impacted in this way. I mentioned it earlier, from visibility to intelligence. You know, we have on the one hand a network. This doesn't tell me only a part of the story. And then I have a whole lot of information sources which is giving me daily input what is going on in the world. Yeah? It starts with any kind of geopolitical risk, weather. We had an interesting discussion in the round table in the point today in the morning. We had lately an incident on Morocco, 3 storms, or was it 4 storms? I can't remember, but you remember. And then suddenly we had a gap. Yeah? What a surprise. We are now at the point where we're saying, okay, we can get weather data much earlier. We can make a prediction what's going to happen, and we can also make a kind of, all over the globe, a kind of discussion on so what. And this is coming back to this decision making really crucial. I have the input and intelligence. I know the risk. I know my map, what's going on, and I can act. Either inventory or let's say building up inventory, or checking also together with the supply base, are you ready for this weather incident, and all around. So, and this we have also for supply for financial health. We are working on cyber exposure. Regulations is also an interesting source. This is also, I think, a good use for AI. What is really happening? Who in what government is bringing what kind of regulation to drive people crazy or to save the world, whatever it means on this point, and how do we act on? Yeah? And our mapping was more or less born also on the kind of forced labor laws from the US, in order simply, because you come to a point where you have to prove you're compliant. Yeah? Operational risk, we use also the data out of the plants, for example, to drive a supplier risk score. That means my intent is to understand not when it happened, so is there a risk before it happened? And we have established a kind of resilience unit who's, let's say, traveling to suppliers who are getting a kind of high risk ranking. What's the problem? You know, some late deliveries, some quality problems. We got some news on criticality in the region, and then we act. So on the one hand, we have ignition signals. On the other hand, we have our map, and this is driving our decision making. Compared to that, what we've done 4 years ago, a complete revolution and a much more intelligent way of making smart decisions on this point. AI. As I already committed, I'm not an expert on that, but I like it somehow to get a little bit deep dive in all this kind of models around. It was in the preparation for today really interesting to see, let's say, that I'm not the only one around that. But nevertheless, I'm sharing you my opinion on this point. I think seriously this is really a kind of tremendous revolution to come. Yeah? And I don't know where it ends up. But what I see is we get We can decide faster and smarter. We get better and faster information. I've touched on the weather. I've touched what I've seen on political situation and on regulations, for example. Understanding of dependencies better, and a kind of creating of scenarios and analyze these huge data mounds and data lakes in order to get valuable information on it. Where I see, let's say, the main opportunity is a kind of around planning, risk scanning. It's already what we are doing. Control towers, the data input into that. And an important bit, what I see is also project management. As a kind of gathering the data and make recommendations for how to proceed. And the big vision, I think, is a kind of, when I heard it at Gartner, right, is a kind of autonomous supply chain. You know, you have only agents flowing around, dark factories, and everybody's controlling and decision making. That's a big vision. Personally, I think it takes a while, because this is really far out to my mind, but good to have a vision. Low impact, what I'm seeing also, kind of to do AI for AI's sake doesn't make really sense. Isolated pilots, only tech-led, is not really helpful on this point. But I strongly believe, and I try to make it on this chart a little bit clear, the quality and the speed of decision making is really impacted with a smart use. And to give this with some data around, it's not my data, a couple of studies, Gartner, McKinsey, PwC, there are a lot of, let's say, interesting data out there. It's a point of kind of, we want it, with a huge market value by 2035, and then there's a kind of what we're doing, if you are ready. And the main thing is, to my mind, is a kind of not a clear strategy around it. And it's more technology driven. So in a recommendation, I'm not going through each of these pointers. There are two things which I realized in my role in the past is, first of all, what problem do I really want to fix? What is it what I need a kind of help for? I've said already the risk element is important for us, that's good. And the next important bit is the people. The people having the right skill set, giving you the reality, as well as preparing the people who, let's say, have to change their jobs a little bit around that. And these are, for me, the two factors driving success in the end and how I want to drive it around. On the leadership point, I've touched on some of the things already. Speed is in the end a kind of, how you lead. And it's about clarity, ownership, courage, and diversity, and the culture. For me, most importantly, my behavior, as I said, because I'm the one who's driving my shop, kind of walking there every day through, people see and think. And I was lately in another situation, I cannot expect from somebody doing what I tell them if I'm not doing what I tell them on the point. Another important element is empowerment. And I said this earlier, kind of turning around. The director is reporting and is shining into the people solving the problem, and listen to them is really important. This cuts off a whole lot of decision blockers in the whole world, and that's how we try. So, and the biggest shift is not technical, it's exactly how you move the ownership in the corner to where the problem in the end sits. If you are in a supply chain role, I would give you, let's say, 4 kind of recommendations what you could do now. There's one, pick the right team, the right people to speed up. Define your speed KPI, and it's really an interesting thing. We are thinking about, we are forced to do things faster, and we think about doing things faster, but we never measure it on this point. And I think this is a kind of, if you want to be fast, how you want to measure, what's your KPI to drive speed? Move the decision closer to the problem. I talked about the empowerment, and eliminate the structural blindness. That means a kind of deep dive and get the right intelligence. I'm a little bit over, but I need only 2 minutes. I see Chris is already wobbling. I took a little bit long, forgive me for that on this point. And I think the supply chains keep breaking, but if you're faster, you're going to win with the right focus, intelligence, structure, leadership, and innovation. And I think that's the way to deal with all the turbulences. And if this is a little bit hard, I think we need all a little bit calmness in this crazy world, and a little bit humor on this point. And I want to close with a question. think. And if you want to discuss it, I'm here today. If your organization is too slow, so why are you tolerating it in this point? Cool, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Heiko, and I fully appreciate that going fast sometimes means slowing down a little bit, so I think it's worth taking the time.
It's worth to think.
Absolutely. Have a seat, because we're gonna carry some of that discussion forward, but I do think, Heiko, you very well articulated these dimensions, both organizationally, technology, partnership, all the elements that we need to think about to move decision-making to the most critical point.